Yeah, I've got too many windows open, but I'll do my best.
Oh, don't worry about it. Little crickets in the background helps our listeners go to sleep easier. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Never Heard of It, the podcast where we talk about the movies that have slipped through our cracks. This is episode number 49. And as always, my name is Craig Moorhead. That's just been true so far. And my co-host is also here, who also has a name.
I do, and it is Shawn Harwell.
Nice.
And always has been, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Now, today, first of all, I want to thank you for being here, Shawn.
Thank you.
We've been colleagues for a long time, and I've always been a big admirer of your work. So trying to get you through this as quickly as possible.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That's Today, the reason we've called Shawn here today is because we're going to talk about a movie that he suggested that we watch. Shawn, I don't know if you have a statement you need to read or anything, but please have your say.
First of all, I do not recall suggesting this.
That's convenient.
And I refute in a surreptitious... Is that what he said? I don't remember. Some fancy word.
Scurrilous. The scurrilous innuendo?
Accusations that I did. Even though I may have, now that I think about it. No, I did suggest this movie, and you know what? If you want to blame me, that's fine, because if you're listening to this, you could make a suggestion, and then you could decide what we talk about. How cool would that be?
Yeah.
If you want to do that, go to neverheardpodcast.com. You'll find links to everywhere you can talk to us, including email. And we would love to hear from you and love to know what on earth you think we should watch, because I bet you have some movies in your closet, in your VHS collection, that you're just dying to know what we think about.
We hope you will join us there. You can also, of course, you can find us on iTunes. You may have already found us on iTunes. Feel free to subscribe, review, and preview. I don't know. It seems like there should be a third thing.
Yeah.
But
delete.
That's a good. Sure. But let's get right into this, because I feel like we have a lot to talk about today.
We got to head into the curves, man.
Just right into these dangerous curves. Shawn, despite your recollections.
Yeah.
How did the suggesting this movie occur to you?
I was looking, Craig, on Amazon,
sure,
as I do frequently, because I feel like, and we should give them credit. If you do subscribe to Amazon Prime, I feel like they are crushing Netflix right now in the just random bullshit category of movies that they add to their service nearly daily. There was a time where Netflix he was like, what is this movie, right? You could go down that rabbit hole. I feel like that's changed a little bit. I think that's happening on Amazon right now. We're in the salad days. So I was looking, and I saw this poster, right? Or just, the image art that they had up for Dangerous Curves. And I'm telling you, like, I didn't do my homework, but there's got to be like 47 other posters that look exactly like this from the 80s, right?
Sure.
You got your teenager. You've got he's literally sitting on like 3 large torsos of women in bikinis. There's a sun behind them, palm trees. It sounds like a fun time. Tate Donovan is in this. I learned that when I looked at the movie info. I like Tate Donovan. I'm seeing him in a bunch of different stuff. He floats around. He's a great character actor, I think. It's very enjoyable. And Grant Heslov, who I don't really know as an actor as much as, if you're a film nerd listening to this, and you probably are, as the guy that, is basically George Clooney's right-hand man right now with their Smokehouse Productions company. He did the adaptation of Ides of March, which was a great movie, and Monuments Men, and I think won an Oscar for producing Argo. So lots of talent behind the camera, and here he is in this movie where clearly you could tell he's going to be like the goofy sidekick,
right.
you know? I mean, I could tell that because he's not on the poster.
Yes.
And Tate Donovan is,
mm-hmm.
and I know what Tate Donovan looks like. I know what Grant Heslov looks like. All respect to Grant. I knew he was going to be the sidekick.
Sure.
So, it just felt like here's a chance for us to have a little bit of fun nostalgia. And, you know, having grown up in the 80s, obviously, I think we probably have affinity for some movies that would not be held up as, you know, like examples of fine art per se.
Sure.
You know, Teen Wolf 2, maybe not to pick on Teen Wolf 2, but,
right.
you know, there's a lot of movies that we love from that time period that are not necessarily what you would call high art.
Agreed.
So I felt like, it would be fantastic to discover another one of those that I haven't heard anybody talk about. I don't know. Are people talking about Dangerous Curves out there? If they are, it's news to me.
Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah. So I was like, Craig, we got to watch Dangerous Curves.
Yeah.
I mean, how could we not?
I can't fault what led you to that suggestion. Somehow the poster it sort of reminds me of Better Off Dead, for instance.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little more successful than this movie in general terms. There's also another movie. I don't know if you...
Yes.
Did you ever see the John Cusack movie Hot Pursuit?
I'm going to say no only because I'm under oath.
That's...
Although, the title, I know.
Yeah.
Movie, I can't think of, no.
Well, I mean, I probably only saw it once or twice as a younger person. But again, I would say it's a little more successful than this movie. And I don't mean in terms of money. I just mean like as a movie and what it's going for. It's kind of hitting those marks. But like that one was... The poster seemed so similar to this. But somehow there was like a whole action element to it. Doesn't matter.
It does.
Let's get into this. Shawn, now you've been known to write for certain filmed entertainments. Is that true?
That is true. Correct.
So what I wanted to do was I was going to walk through this plot step by step with you and talk with you about why maybe Dangerous Curves, at least in my opinion, the humor does not work, and the story generally doesn't work. And those two things, most likely just go hand in hand. But I want to start with the poster.
Okay.
Now, the tagline is, Chuck should have known better. You don't make a pass on dangerous curves. Shawn, does that tagline seem to have anything to do with what transpires in the movie?
I'd say the first part of that sentence, yes.
Sure. Okay.
I'd say there's a lot of evidence that Chuck does know better.
Yes.
In fact, I think he spends the first 20 minutes of this movie saying as much.
That's
in different words.
Fair enough.
Making a pass on dangerous curves? I'd say I think he did. He did go for the dangerous curves.
Well, now...
And that's maybe part of the problem, right?
I guess my thing is, the way the movie lays out, to me, that tagline would suggest that a lady led him astray.
Not the case.
And that is not the case. So let's just jump right into the plot. So you've got Tate Donovan, very likable actor, and Grant Heslov, I would also argue, quite likable.
Sure, yeah.
One thing I'm gonna probably get into it with you throughout the show here is about sometimes like where the funny comes from. Sometimes the funny comes from just the writing itself. Sometimes it can come just from the performance. And sometimes you need both at the same time.
Sometimes you have neither.
Right. Right. Indeed.
Okay.
So
yes.
Okay. So we're jumping into it. So Chuck, played by Tate Donovan. Did I say taint? Sorry.
I hope so. Yes.
I'm not going to cut that out, but I'm going to cut that out. No. So Chuck, played by Tate Donovan, is an uptight college student in Los Angeles. Did you know we were in Los Angeles to begin with?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was not aware that's where we were.
Kind of figured it out.
Yeah. I mean, I assumed we were in California somewhere, but I didn't feel like it was kind of laid out for us.
Definitely not.
He's hired by a successful businessman to deliver a Porsche to his daughter in Lake Tahoe with the promise of a job if the delivery is successful. Now, I would say that's pretty accurate.
I would too, but man, I think we could unpack that first sentence for probably an hour.
Yes.
Because I just want to say something up front.
Sure.
Right? And I'm not going to spend an hour unpacking this.
Fair enough.
But to talk about, not establishing setting,
mm-hmm.
The only really indication that we have that these guys are in college is that it opens on them in the dorm room.
Yeah.
And you never get really a shot of a campus.
Well, there is
just them
for a second. There's like an establishing shot of a building.
Yeah,
I do remember there being a building, but yeah, you don't know
when they're loading the Porsche. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I think it was. I maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I seem to remember it was just before we went into the dorm room. But it's a picture of a building. God. Yeah. Like it's not like even like kids walking around with backpacks or anything. Like it's just a building.
Well, and prior to this, actually, I mean, I was so transfixed by the animated aha video opening credits.
Oh boy.
Of like a women's body and this Porsche. I mean, like I will say, like I was kind of in heaven during that part because
sure.
You don't get more 80s
than
that kind of like aha animated, still sort of like video toaster art kind of thing. Right. Girls in those like crazy bikinis with big hair
mm-hmm.
and the Porsche that's not even like the cool 911 Porsche, it's like a 928 or something like that.
Right.
I was like, this has everything I need, right? This is like classic 80s tropes right here, just in this credit sequence.
Absolutely.
And then you're right. Yes, the problem starts. We don't get a clear establishment of setting, and I would argue we don't get a very clear identity that Chuck is even uptight at this point.
No.
He's sitting at his computer on his side of the room, and Heslov is like watching TV, and there's a girl tanning in his room, which I guess he charges people to like sit under a tanning bulb or something.
That made no sense. Yeah.
But yeah, there's not enough there. There is not enough there to figure that all out before his dad calls and telling him he has an interview with this successful businessman.
Yes.
Who is played by
Robert Stack.
Oh, what's his face?
Yeah.
Robert Stack. That's right. And
well, and before we go to him, and we're going to go to him very quickly, mm-hmm. I'd like to point out that we start out, so Chuck and his roommate Walter, played by Grant Heslov, also known as Wally, who is a girl-obsessed friend and roommate.
Yes. Typical horny 80s sidekick.
Exactly. So these two guys seem like they would not like each other, and they have nothing in common. And from the mm-hmm. very beginning, all they're doing is bickering with each other.
Yeah.
And yet they're supposed to be best friends. But
they kind of like each other, yeah. I mean,
so they go, yeah. I mean, at least as far as I remember, it's all about Chuck. Like he's getting this call, and Wally is, I don't know. Wally's just being no help at all. But Chuck gets this call, and he's going to get this interview with this very successful businessman. And Wally couldn't care less. In fact, Wally, in an example of our early misfires at humor, Chuck is super excited about this interview, and so he holds up two different suits and he says, which suit should I wear to my interview? And, mm-hmm. and Wally goes over to his pile of clothes and picks up like a Hawaiian shirt and says, this, basically this is the suit you should wear. And I was just like, oh shit. Like this is where our level of humor is going to be in this movie.
Yep.
Because Wally's supposed to be the wacky one, the one who's too laid back and doesn't take anything seriously. He's the party guy. So Chuck goes and meets with Robert Stack, and I would say this for me personally, this is about as funny as the movie gets. Is Robert Stack talking about...
Really? Okay, yeah.
It's him talking about his days in Vietnam and how he saved Tate Donovan's father's life. But God damn it, that guy saved his life twice, so he owes him one. Like, that was kind of funny. So he doesn't want to be talking to Tate Donovan. And, I mean... Let's talk about...
There's a lot of talk about ripping flesh off of bones.
Yes.
And
Robert Stack is very... Yeah, he's very intimidating. He's very straight-faced. He says, if you can drive this Porsche to Lake Tahoe, where my daughter will be for her birthday, I might give you a job. Which is a really sort of bizarre, weak-ish setup. But okay, sure. I mean, like, you got to accept that if you're going to go into the movie at all, right? So you're like, yeah, so you're going to give this guy your Porsche to drive out there. You're not going to have it delivered by, like, a professional service. You're going to let this guy take your... Fine. That's fine. And so of course, Chuck...
Well...
Yes?
I was going to say, in talking about ways to possibly improve that setup...
Right.
I think I would have been fine if I just knew what the hell this guy does. I don't even know what kind of job Tate Donovan is hoping to get, and they never really say.
Exactly. It's a business job.
Yeah, okay, you're uptight. I get it. But be specific. Like, what do you want to do? Like, what's your dream? And, like, I know that it starts at $60,000 because he makes a big point of that later on to Wally. But just, like, flesh that out. Like, why be vague? You know, give the guy a dream. Okay. And then have it shit upon.
Well, yeah.
So that to me was, like, a misstep. And again, like, even just prior to that, like, think about Revenge of the Nerds, right?
Yeah.
Like, even, like, the first time you meet that guy, Anthony Edwards, right, his character, I think is when he's in his bed and they pull the sheets back. And he's completely dressed and has his shoes on. I mean, just like little things like that. Like, that's funny and it's sweet and, like, it gives you a glimpse. It's the same thing. It's two guys going to college. Right. Like, it's kind of like, but you get everything you need to know and, like, those characters are defined. And yeah, there's humor and there's also movement. Like, you're not stuck in a crappy dorm room that's got very little set dressing. You get, like, two angles. And yeah, okay, maybe the budget was way lower on this than it was even on Revenge of the Nerds.
Right.
But
still,
I just felt like, like, build out that first act a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, that would have gone so far. But Craig, I want to say, like, before we leave the business scene, because I do think, like, if you haven't seen this movie and you're never going to watch this movie, that's fine. But as someone who's watched any 80s movies, how could you not watch that scene and think, okay, this movie is going to end up in Tahoe. That car is going to be banged to shit.
Yes.
You know, they're barely going to get there, and he'll somehow win Robert Stack's daughter, excuse me. Like, she's going to be the girl, the love interest.
Right. Yeah, I mean...
None of that happens.
Exactly.
None of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and it's kind of what you're saying, like, you know, we're not building up his character enough in the first act.
Yeah.
Like, you get to like, as a viewer, you're so starved for setup at this point that you're hanging on the successful Robert Stack's, like, every Fasciano is his name. You're hanging on his every word. Yeah. Like, oh man, Maria. Like, who's Maria? When is he going to meet Maria? And like all that. And it's like, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But like, that all feels like major setup stuff. And so you get out of there, and they're gonna. He's of course he accepts the job, and Robert Stack is like, if you don't get it there, like, I'm gonna break your neck. And he's like, okay.
I mean, there's more or less, is what he's saying.
And so like, next scene or so, Chuck and Wally are fighting over it, because now Wally, for no good reason besides you got to have things happen, Wally's like, let's go to San Diego first. Let's drive this Porsche to San Diego. Which doesn't make any sense. And Chuck should just be like, no. And then you're done. You don't have to have more of a conversation now. Wally's very intent on being driven to San Diego in this Porsche. So Chuck is...
Well, let me ask you this. Can I?
Please.
Did they mention the beauty bikini pageant as a reason to go to San Diego in that section.
Not that I remember it at all.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Because that would have been so simple, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. That would have helped.
There's like 20 of the hottest girls ever
are
going to be in San Diego on this day.
Yeah.
We got to go there. We'll have plenty of time. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
it's all right in front of them, right?
Yeah.
And like for whatever reason, like the map, it just goes to 20 different places that don't connect.
Yes. And
continue.
Well, yeah, and in that scene, you've got Wally who's just being needlessly annoying about going to San Diego.
Yeah.
When like his friend, his best friend in the world has to do is drive this thing to Lake Tahoe, and he'll get a shot at getting a job at a company he really cares about. That's all his friend wants to do. So you're being a dick and just being like, no, let's go to San Diego and check out some chicks. Anyway.
I know, like Craig, I will say, like if you had come to me in college and was like, hey, I got to drive this Porsche to, Charleston, South Carolina. Do you want to come with me? Yes.
Sure.
Let's go. That's an adventure enough.
Right.
We don't need to go to San Diego.
No.
Like, I'm not going to try to talk you out of that to do something else unless there's something really specific that I have to go to San Diego.
We got to go to Myrtle Beach first. Why? No reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like, wouldn't he have fun? There's going to be he already said there's a girl going to be there.
You're in California. You're driving to Lake Tahoe. Where are you not going to see girls? Yeah.
But yeah, just go. Like, yeah, that was so bizarre to me.
It is.
And then they're fighting over that, and like Wally's loading stuff in the car, skis, all that stuff, and like Chuck is throwing them out in the process. And like Chuck, he does seem adamant about this. Like, we're not doing this.
Right.
And like, I'm like you. I'm like, boy, Wally's just being kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Like, this is not like.
Well,
I don't buy it. And like, why are you not just being cool about this? Like, you want to come, okay, but just chill out. Like, stop trying to like steer this situation. Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't know.
And Chuck, on the other hand, he's like, as you pointed out earlier, he's like, you have any idea of like what the starting salary is? Like $60,000. So I've got an annoying guy who wants to do everything but what his friend wants to do, and on the other hand, I got our hero who's doing this just so he'll get a fat paycheck someday. I'm kind of like, man, I don't really feel much for either one of these guys right now. Like,
you love these guys.
Yeah, like I don't know. I wish, like, because Tate Donovan is a super likable actor, I think. Especially like, back here, he does look kind of he is great for cast in terms of like being an uptight college student. Like, he does. He looks young. He looks like practically like a freshman in a way, and super uptight. Great, like good casting in those terms. But yeah, like everything he's saying is just. I don't know. It's so far everything's kind of obnoxious, and then Chuck.
Well, and I was gonna say, well, you just made me think about, like, again, we're gonna just drop comparisons. I'm sure this whole episode, like Ferris Bueller, it would be as if Cameron were the lead,
Sure.
like in some, like that uptight guy, the archetype. There's a million ways to make that work, and to make them sympathetic and likable. And like the motivation needs to be like, get out and live a little. Like here, it's not. It's like it just it's just not that clean and clear.
Well,
and so
and let's step over sideways to another 80s movie that I think does this dynamic a lot more successfully, which is Real Genius. So you have Val Kilmer, he's the party guy. You have the freshman who's super uptight, but like all of that stuff works really well, like throughout the entire movie. Yeah, like one person needs to loosen up, the other person needs to like focus, and it kind of like works together. Here, that's kind of what you're thinking. Like, okay, so this guy's going to need to lighten up and loosen up at some point. Like that's kind of generally where we're headed in a way.
Yeah,
and I mean, I guess that's it because I have no idea what Wally needs or needs to have.
Well,
happen.
Usually, like you learn a little from each. Well, Real Genius is a great example. Yeah. They do need each other to kind of get that project, finished at the end.
Yeah.
And not so much here.
Not so much. So Chuck and Wally are on the road. Somehow they end up on the road together, and they stop somewhere. Wally. I mean, I can't even get into the details of this. Like, I can't even remember like how this was contrived to happen. but they stop to get something. Wally says, hey, that girl checked you out. And so Chuck goes into this like convenience store after these girls while and Wally's like, don't worry, like I'll load your skis into the car and lock everything up. Okay, first of all, what? Of course that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Chuck is uptight. He's super scared about what's happening. He's not going to let Wally take care of the Porsche ever. So, but he does. Wally puts a huge gash in the dashboard with the skis and then freaks out and goes inside to tell Chuck that?
With the skis.
With the skis.
Yes.
To tell Chuck that, I guess? Or was he went into I can't remember exactly why he went in.
I think he did go in to tell him that, but also just to go in.
Sure.
You know, because of the girls.
Because of the girls. And then
I don't know, to get donuts or something. Who knows?
They have some interaction with the girls, and they come outside, and the car has been stolen because Wally left it like completely open. So
well, not only that, it was confusing as if they parked it in a handicap spot.
That was terribly confusing. I was wondering, like, maybe that was matted out in a different version. Like, that's all I could think, because they never talk about it.
No, and I'm like, there's no way that Chuck would let him park at a freaking handicap spot, or Chuck certainly wouldn't park in a handicap spot.
Wally was driving the car.
Well, that was something else I wanted to bring up. As uptight as Chuck is, I mean, like the whole time, like they're in the car. We're not going to San Diego. We're not going to San Diego. We're not going to San Diego. Okay, we'll go to San Diego a little bit. And then there's a cut where you see a motorcycle police officer.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's getting pulled over. And then Wally is driving.
Yeah.
And not only is Wally driving, like Chuck is like furious, like I shouldn't have let you drive. You know, it's like
you were going so fast.
Yeah, I agree. You should not have let him drive, and I never believed that you would have, based on everything I've seen about you in the first 5 minutes. But then it's like, you know, how fast was I going, officer? He's like, well, I clocked you at 95, and Chuck is like, what?
Right.
I can't believe this. You're killing me. It's like, dude, you're sitting in the car beside him. You're the most uptight person I've seen. How do you not know this car is going 95?
Yeah.
Why did you let him drive it?
Yes.
This makes no sense. I don't believe it. And we're not even going to finish the scene. We're just going to cut out. And the next thing you know, we're at the convenience store. And that happens. And I'm just like, what is going on?
Well, one second too, though, is because actually just before we leave that scene where they get that ticket, which I totally forgot about, and it was a totally bizarre scene, at the end of that scene, Chuck says, oh, my life is over. Right? He says, my life is over. So I'm like, wow, so this is that's what's going to happen?
Yeah. They're going to pay $70 for a speeding ticket.
I guess. Because, and I won't give things away like this throughout, because we have some amazing payoffs coming up at the end of this talk that we're going to have. Mm-hmm. But this never comes up again.
Nope.
They got a ticket, and it's like it never happened. You take that scene out of the movie, doesn't matter.
I would argue they should have taken that scene out of the movie. Definitely
should have taken that scene out of the movie.
Because it only confused things.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all. Because, what's going to happen in the next scene? I mean, think if you're actually writing this, in that scene, you're like, oh, my life is over. In the next scene, the car is stolen. It's like, what is... like
that's when your life is over.
Yeah, anyway. So, yes. So the car is stolen out of a handicap spot for whatever reason. And okay, let me get back to my plot. I gotta hang on this plot.
Go back to Wikipedia.
Okay, the Porsche is stolen, and so they decide they have to get it back without involving the police. And I felt like, okay, fine, that makes enough sense. Fasciano seems like a psychopath.
Kind of.
Well, but like he seems scary enough where it's like, well, we should try to get it back first. Because if he finds out I lost the Porsche, like I'm just a dead man.
Yeah, and they're not supposed to be in San Diego or wherever they are at that point.
So okay.
I went along with that.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Cut to ladies in a beauty pageant, Shawn.
Mm-hmm.
Just cut to. Our hero just had this car stolen that means everything in the world to what he wants to do for his whole future. And then we go with these other unrelated characters, except two of them were in that convenience store. Those were the girls they went in to talk to. Well, they want to be in a beauty pageant. One is trying to talk the other one into being a beauty pageant, I guess. How did you feel about suddenly being a part of a beauty pageant, Shawn?
Oh, man. It was definitely unexpected. I did appreciate the sheer comedy of having the host of the beauty pageant, who's this kind of greasy comedian who literally breaks out like a Jerry Lewis impression of the when he's describing the women's breast, bad jokes and stuff like that. I was amazed by how much screen time they gave the guy, but I was like, okay, yeah, these comedies, like, you sort of like flesh out the world with these little bit parts that are a little bit wacky, and a little broad, and even broader than the other stuff. I immediately scratched my head, though, Craig, when he said something about the talent competition will be tomorrow and come back. And I was like, this is a 2-day pageant? Right. Where on earth do they have 2-day bikini pageant?
just set up outside.
It was amazing. At the beach. Huge crowd, too. And, like, I love those crowd shots. I mean, there's some great, like, just... like, this is the only, like, time period I can think of that I've ever seen where teenagers look like they're 45, and they do here as well. And that's kind of a sight to behold. But no, Craig, and even then, I did not expect that would become such a part of this plot. Still. Yeah. I mean, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, there's the two girls from the convenience store. They're in this pageant. We're getting a little bit of their characters. There's a couple other ones introduced, one of whom, I'm going to go ahead and say it, his name's Shawn, spelled the same way as me, Heath Michaels. I know you're listening. I know what you're going to say.
She's so pretty. Go ahead.
She's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm still, like, in the back of my head, like, okay, they're going to get them. Eventually, they're going to go to Tahoe, right, with these girls. Right. Like, I don't know.
Like, they'll just get caught up in the adventure and they'll just keep going. It's a road trip, movie. So they're just going to keep going.
There was one other bright spot within this section for me, though, and that was the introduction of the taxi driver, Hector, played by Robert Romanus.
Mike Damone.
We know him as Damone. Damone from Fast Times. And, doing a little riff probably on that same character, but he's great, man. I even in tiny little parts here, I was like, I could watch this guy forever.
Yeah, he does feel like solid, like he's like solid 80s casting, no matter what. For sure, and I do. Yeah, as soon as he showed up, I was like, man. I mean, to be honest, I was kind of like, I wish this was what the movie was about. I wish we could follow this guy around in his cab. Honestly,
yeah, because he's like depressed and he's like, he knows it's like a deadbeat job. And he's like, oh, this is kind of my life right now. I loved it. Like, he didn't deliver it as like a jokey thing. It's just straightforward. Right.
And we actually got a lot of character out of him. And really, for sure, in the end, for what reason? For what reason?
None.
Yeah. None. We didn't have to have that cab character. But here's the thing.
But he's more likable than... Anyway.
Yeah. Well, so we're at this beauty pageant. And... Yeah,
go ahead and tell the connection.
Yes. Here. So... Oh, man. I mean, there's so much to work here. Okay. And so the announcer says, and here's like the grand prize for the winner of this contest. And they open up this tent and these guys roll out a big red Porsche. And of course, Chuck and Wally see that and they freak out. And as soon as everyone clears away and they leave the Porsche on the stage, I'm not sure what that's about, but then Chuck and Wally jump up there and they look at the car. And they know it's theirs, Shawn, because it has a huge gash in the dashboard.
Yep.
So, a few things here. You're going to have your grand prize, beautiful Porsche, have a huge gash in the dashboard? Like, that's a car that's going to be a... Like, how? What? I don't understand that. Small point, I guess. But...
I would argue, Craig, that even with the gash... That still feels like kind of a big prize for the scale of this pageant.
True. Agreed.
Not to belittle the ladies involved or anything about San Diego. Right. I would be surprised if they're giving away Porsches now in any beauty pageant in San Diego. Prove me wrong, somebody.
Right.
But anyway,
I agree. But here's the thing. So I want to ask you. So someone has said, Shawn, we need you to write this movie. Here's what we got. We got a Porsche. We got a bunch of ladies to be in this beauty pageant. Okay.
Mandatory. Yeah.
And we need that Porsche to have been stolen. Okay. So you get to this point in the script. And you're like, okay, I'm making this 80s movie. These two guys, they have to get this Porsche back. Okay. Neither one of them are car thieves. So it's not going to be easy just like hot wiring it and driving it away.
Right.
This is the 80s, Shawn. It's a comedy. What are these guys going to do to get that Porsche?
They're going to join the beauty pageant.
Of course they are. They're going to dress up like ladies.
Yes.
And
do a little ladybugs action.
Of course they're going to.
It's like Soul Man in bikinis. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, that's not what happens here. Instead, I believe it's at this point some security guards come out and actually pull their
we got to talk about those
guns
guys.
on these guys because they're looking at a car and saying, "Oh no, this is my car," and they literally pull guns on them.
They are prepared to shoot and murder them dead on the sand for staring at that car for 2 seconds longer than they do.
So let's.
And we need to come back to that point because there could be a connection made where that would make a kind of sense within the logic of this movie, but it doesn't.
Sure.
Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so some inept security guards chase them away. We will see those guys a number of times.
Do we get the black ski mask and clothes right after this? Or no? We see the hotel manager, but
right. So here's the thing, and okay, so watching the movie, they decide they need to figure out how this car got here. Clearly, it was stolen from them, so whoever supplied it probably is the one who stole it. So what our heroes decide to do is dress up completely in black with black toboggans. They just somewhere they get black clothes. I don't remember there being a scene.
We have to imagine they went and bought all of this stuff.
They went and bought a bunch of stuff so that they could break in.
Seems so unlikely.
So that they could dress up like cat burglars and walk down a lit hallway. Also telling in the writing, I feel like, is that the scene in which they go through this fence, which I guess is sort of the threshold of like, I don't know, it seems to be too much for Chuck. Because suddenly Chuck is like, man, are you sure about this plan? And it's like, you're asking that now? You went out and bought clothes.
There's nothing about Chuck that would ever go along with that. I mean, from the way they established him, yeah. And then, he's asking about it in the act of doing it. Yeah.
It's like, no, you're well past that. So anyway, Shawn. So they go... Wait, what is it? No, they go and confront the beauty pageant owner first, who seems to be some drunk lady who's depressed. And anyway, so they're going back to break into her office.
And I'm not sure, I can't even remember why. Like, why were they even trying to do that?
I mean, I assume it's because...
Were they trying to get the keys or something?
Well, I thought it was that they were trying to figure out how they got the car. And to me, I was like, when they rolled that car out, there was a license plate on the front that said Krevsky. And Krevsky is a huge, auto sales guy, I guess, in the area. So, why do we have to break into a place to find out what they find out, right? Because they don't get keys. They get, a pink slip.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, no, it is your car. You're supposed to have this car. All you need is the keys.
Right, yeah.
You can explain your way out of any situation with a police officer by saying, I was given this to drive. Here's the name of the person that gave it to me. Here's the registration, blah, 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 blah. Which they've already done when they got pulled over for the speeding ticket.
Yes. Yeah.
Just get
They're
the keys.
on the books.
Just get the keys and get out
exactly.
of there. Right?
That worthless scene has already too much bearing. That's another reason why it should be gone. But so they break in. The worthless security guards somehow stumble on their way into that. and search the room and don't find them. And then a chase ensues. One of many.
Yeah.
Hilarious hijinks chases.
Yeah. And it ends with our heroes just entering a room randomly.
Oh, boy.
And I bet you can't guess who's in that room.
Mm-hmm.
2 girls from the convenience store who are in the bikini pageant. The door just opens. It's not locked. I thought that was not a relatively modern advancement in hotel door
88, I think
technology.
there were locked hotel doors.
Yeah, it looks like it is of the type.
Sure.
But they break in. They try to explain themselves. The girls recognize them. You get all that stuff. I mean, one of the girls is hanging upside down from some sort of exercise bar thing. And yeah, it was kind of comical, that conversation, I guess. But I loved that the scene ends with they do call security. They call hotel security and then push them out of the room. Like, to me, it just felt like, well, why don't you just wait for security to get there at this point? Like, you just call them. Or why wouldn't the dudes, when they call security, why wouldn't they take off then?
Right.
You know? Like, it was just... Didn't make a ton of sense. No. Although I will say it felt like one of those scenes where like the girls were going to threaten to call security but not actually do it, you know, and somehow they would end up, okay, you can stay here, you can hide here, but as soon as they got, you know, you got to leave in like 30 minutes, or they'd find some sort of like mutual agreement, right? And at least that didn't happen here.
True. Although I will say,
you know, it's going to happen
one
later,
moment that did happen is, they go over and they pick up the phone to call security. But they pause. They pause to consider Wally saying, he says, no, you don't understand. Chuck just wants to tell you how beautiful you are. And they actually pause and wait for a second to listen to what Chuck has to say.
Yeah, I did like, and I don't know if it was in that moment or one of the previous moments, just the performance where, because like Chuck, when he sees this girl, he just kind of like shuts down and he just has this like blank stare, which I thought was kind of comical. And then at one point, Grant Heslov's like, he just waves his hand in front. He's like, he gets stuck sometimes. Like, that's what he's
fair enough.
Which, you know, I mean, as far as low hanging fruit goes, that one kind of worked for me. Okay.
But boy, it would mean a little more if that made sense in a character way. Like, I mean, it's just kind of like, she's just some girl. Like, there's no, you know what I mean? Like, I understand being transfixed by someone you don't know and all that stuff. But I mean, But yeah, it's just like, but why? Anyway, there's not enough sort of behind it to make it interesting.
Not. Yeah, they could have set that up at college before he even left. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a number of ways to to do that.
See every other 80s movie.
Meanwhile, and I don't even want to go into this whole subplot, but within the beauty pageant, there's this other girl who's got a domineering mom, and that girl is she's like the mean one in the beauty pageant, and man, every time that thing would pick up.
That's Shawn, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, God, I didn't want to watch any
rough.
of that.
There's something about that actress, too, which I see her name is Karen Lynn Scott. Like, her go-to is to bug her eyes out, like, insane. It was just such a weird reaction to her mom. I mean, it was kind of funny that here we are in 88 and you're sort of getting the pageant mom, which has become a thing, you know, in the last 10, 15 years in its own right, in our own pop culture. So I guess it was kind of nice that they touched on that. But again, it was like, is this a movie about a pageant, or is this movie about getting this damn car to Tahoe?
Right. You know? Because let's not forget, the fact that this thing got stolen and he might not get it back. We can't forget. He's got to get this thing to Tahoe, or Fasciano's going to just straight up murder him.
Yeah, he's already said his life is over. Right. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. Do you really need to flesh out the pageant world?
You don't.
For this storyline, you kind of don't, and they do, and it ends up taking like real estate even away from Chuck and Wally.
It takes an amazing amount of time away from that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
So again, so they broke in, and by breaking into that office, they found out that this guy, Greg Krevsky, that's where they got the car.
Yeah.
Which again, the name Krevsky was on the car at the beauty pageant.
That's right.
But that doesn't matter. So then within the politics of the pageant, the mom of that one girl sets up with Krevsky that he's got a boat. Jesus. How complicated. Like, it does feel like a first draft sort of stream of conscious.
It does a little bit.
Sort of script, right? Like, you cannot go back. Like, that's the only rule. You just keep writing a straight line, and whatever you got to make up on the fly, you just got to make it up. So Krevsky, he's got a like a floating casino, and so they're going to get the two girls who that mom thinks will beat her girl on the boat, and they'll keep her on the boat while the pageant's going on. Meanwhile, Chuck and Wally also get on the boat because that's Krevsky's boat, and they're trying to find evidence of the theft. What evidence? Like, why would you get on the boat? Like, the theft of the evidence is on this casino boat. I don't know.
All you need is the keys. Again, all you need are the keys.
Just get the keys.
Or just hotwire.
And drive. Yeah, or find someone. Yeah, exactly. To hotwire anything.
Which, they did a little bit. And I'll talk about a second, but we should say before we get too far ahead, Krevsky, the character, is played by none other than Leslie Nielsen. And I think this is the same year as Naked Gun, the first one.
Wow.
And he's oddly not used comedically at all in this movie.
Yeah.
At least I didn't think so. I mean, he's got maybe one line reading that to me felt like was bordering on the edge of comedy. But, I mean, it's like a 5-minute performance, screen time.
And here's the other thing, Shawn, and I like to know just in terms of how you would typically lay stuff out. Like, let's talk about Eastbound and Down. Now, Kenny Powers is not necessarily likable with a capital L, but you like him.
I'd say the opposite,
which is kind of amazing in and of itself. But
credit to Danny.
In Eastbound, you had a pretty great bad guy in Will Ferrell's. Strangely enough, in Will Ferrell's like used car salesman, right?
Ashley Schaefer. Yeah.
So.
He was the Krevsky of Wilmington, North Carolina, or Shelby, North Carolina. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just didn't know it.
And that's the thing. So in this movie, you're only meeting Krevsky for the first time on this boat, and he's conspiring with the mom of a beauty pageant to keep two of the girls on there so that her girl will win the Porsche that he stole and put. I mean, it's ridiculous. I guess my question is
I don't know what's in it for Krevsky, right?
Like how did he need to be set up? Because at this point he is the bad guy. He has been the biggest protagonist and antagonist to what Chuck needs to accomplish.
I just put some life into it. Like I almost think like the bad guy plot like clearly does not even matter in this. Like, whatever explanation of it all there is, it's not really going to amount to much. So just make him like an interesting, fun character, especially when you have Leslie Nielsen, man. Like, come on. Like, just make him larger than life. Like, I have no clue. Like, he's just a generic bad guy. Like, he steals cars.
He's barely even a bad
guy.
His thing. Like,
yeah. He's got some heavies around him, the bodyguards and that kind of thing. But that, it's weird. It's there's that level, and then it's like, you're saying he's conspiring with one of the pageant moms. Like, to what end? Right. Make him ruthless. Make him anything. Just make him funny from one thing. But I mean, the Riverboat Casino kind of thing is kind of like a fun setting. It could be, should be, and it's not here. But again, I think that all goes back to stakes, I guess, and like that the clarity of that. I feel like even if it was like a funny character, a big character, like a memorable character, you'd still be left a little hollow from the fact that you're not understanding why your main characters are interacting with this guy.
Yeah.
So all of that, I think you're crippled by that, even if you do sort of like make a role out of that guy.
Yes. Agreed. And I think the the key thing is clarity, and there's really not a whole lot of clarity here, to be sure.
Well, I will say, there's a little section that we skipped that it doesn't amount to anything, but some of my favorite stuff in this movie came from, and that was when these guys meet the character of Bam Bam, played by Robert Klein.
Yeah.
And I think, after the chase and then getting kicked out of the girl's room, I think we kind of just cut to the guys waking up on the beach. They've got their toboggan hats on, just like in odd places. I think they've had some beers. But Bam Bam is sort of this beach bum surfer hippie guy. It's older or whatever, and kind of makes friends with them. And, they talk about the car. I think he knew about Krevsky, right? I think he's maybe the one that pointed out, like, oh, yeah, man, like he's the guy that, hot, he's every car that's on his lot is hot, that kind of thing. There were a couple lines that I liked here. One, he asked, I believe Chuck, he says, how old are you? And Chuck's like, I'm 21. He's like, man, when I was your age, I was 22. And that's like the end of the line.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like that was fun. And like, I almost wonder if Robert Klein just came up with that himself, because it did make me laugh. And then, he's like, yeah, I can help you hotwire the car, man. You just got to get me to it. And so they go back to the pageant, which I think is day 2. The talent competition. I don't even remember what the hell the talent competition was, or maybe it was something else.
Yeah, I remember seeing anyone doing
more of that.
Yeah, talent stuff.
Yeah, you get the more of the great host and all that stuff. Or maybe that was after the river. Anyway, the moment where they're trying to wire the car, but the car has been driven up onto a little platform. Right. So it's not actually like, it's on this metal thing instead of the ground. He's like, well, I don't know if I can do this, man. But like, they sneak into the car, and then I think Grant Heslov has a line like, so basically your plan was just getting in the car? It's like, yeah, kind of, It's just like, to me, like, that's where it like embraces the level of stupidity that's at hand. It's like, well, okay, like at least you're acknowledging this is dumb, right? You've got one character who's, his brain cells have been fried to the point where he can embrace the stupidity, and you can play off of that in a fun way. So I did at least appreciate that, and especially like within the context of wherever this came, either before or after that riverboat scene, where I'm just like, I do not know. And for God's sakes, we have to talk about how they get off that damn riverboat, right?
Yeah.
There are 2 jet skis just parked in the water on the side of this boat.
As you do.
And I did not think of the boat being anchored offshore.
No.
Maybe it was, because the girls at a certain point, they realize that Shawn, that character, the mom, the beauty pageant mom, has set them up. They're on this boat. They can't get off. They're not going to make it back in time for whatever the next round of this ridiculous bikini pageant show is. They're telling a guard, they got to get back now, And you get the hilarious scene where Blake throws the drinks in the face of the pageant mom. And just like the line reading is hysterical. Yeah. Anyway. So in my head, I had it established that the boat was moving the whole time. And like, yeah, they're out at sea now. And, they're not swimming back to shore. And they're not going to get back in time. That's it. They're stuck. Right. But no, they get out. There's just 2 jet skis parked right there. They make this whole elaborate thing out of them jumping off of a 2-story riverboat into water as if like it's like death defying. They might die,
right?
And 3 times, like you get Chuck and what was the girl, Michelle, and then you get Grant Heslov and Blake, and then you get the 2 security guards, these big heavy dudes who hold hands and jump off boat as if they're gonna die. And at this point, like, the dudes are already, our heroes are already on their jet skis. Like, are the security guards just gonna swim and catch them? No,
there's nothing down there for them to help.
It's preposterous.
For some reason, the next thing I remember is so they found materials on that boat. They found a briefcase. They find the Porsche's original license plate, and there are a bunch of other license plates in there, and I think there are keys in there. Finally, right?
Finally, I think so.
So they take the jet skis back to land. They end up in a lot of Krevskis, and they're just trying to unlock a car. What car are we going to take to get back to the place or whatever? And we're going to take, it's a Ferrari.
Ferrari.
So... Yeah.
And not a Testarossa, which was like the cool Ferrari of the 80s, right? Something else.
It's just some lame-o Ferrari.
Wouldn't even take it if you gave it to me.
They go back to the hotel, and there's a moment where, I really can't be bothered to think about any of these details now. There's a moment where they switch cars with Damone, the cab driver, and all I could think was, but if the cops get Damone in that car, he's going to go to prison. So how is this a good idea? He didn't seem like he was a criminal to begin with. He would know the ins and outs of anything.
No.
They're like, hey, why don't you take this, man? He's like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. I'm like, that sounds like a terrible idea.
No, I'd say if he got caught by the cops, I feel like he would probably just say, oh, yeah, these two knuckleheads gave me this car. I'm just doing it for the...
Yeah, I
I don't know. He's a nice guy. Maybe he wouldn't give them up, but I don't know why he wouldn't. I don't
right.
Think,
well, he would, but at the same time, why would the cops even care if he said somebody gave it to him? It's like, but this is... Because, at this point, it belongs to Krevsky, so now you stole from Krevsky. I don't know. It just seemed like a bad deal. I didn't know why it was happening, and as it turns out, it didn't matter that it did happen, as far as I can tell.
Does not, nope.
Yeah, this is where it all slips away from me here. But, okay, so they agree to work together to steal the Porsche. Chuck and Michelle spend the night together on a catamaran. That's about as random as it feels. Because, then they're out on the beach.
Yeah. They all hang out on the beach that night with Bam Bam. And
they just talk
Chuck
about nonsense.
Michelle getting kind of close.
Has nothing to do with anything.
I did love... there's a moment where Michelle and Chuck they separate from the group and go to this catamaran. And she's like... the first time I met you, I just thought you were an idiot. You were like a bumbling fool. You were incompetent. She's just saying all these disparaging things. And then I'm like, wait a second. The first time she met him was in the convenience store.
Right.
And there wasn't really anything that happened with Chuck to make him look like a bumbling fool completely. Was it?
No, he was just a normal guy. Wally came in and knocked a ton of stuff off the shelves with the skis, but
basically, you're building up to the last day of the pageant and who's going to win this thing, right? I guess.
Yeah.
Because I'm really with you in struggling to figure out what exactly their plan was.
Yeah.
Because I think, okay, who wins the damn contest? Do we remember that?
I thought that Blake did win. Right?
Okay,
the mean
too.
girl won.
Yeah.
I thought.
Oh no! Wait. Okay. So Shawn, the girl with the mom.
The girl with the mom's name is Blake. Oh yeah, we've been saying it's Shawn the whole time. No, Shawn is the Texan with the big teeth.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. And so Blake.
Okay. Yes. So Blake wins.
I thought Blake won. Because there's a really terrible scene where all of a sudden everyone then has sympathy for Blake because she says one thing. Oh God!
No,
but anyway,
that's right.
Yeah. So then they're all buddies, and meanwhile, Chuck and Wally get some squirt guns that look like Uzis, and they basically carjack it from the two security guards who pulled a gun on them earlier for just looking at a car. How that scene would ever end without Chuck and Wally being dead is just not realistic. But they carjack him. Damone drives up in the Ferrari completely, no one expected. Oh, someone actually literally, I think, says, hey, good timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is good timing that he randomly drove up right then. And so then they wheel the Ferrari out as a replacement prize for this pageant, and Krevsky walks into this audience and is screaming, but that's my car, don't give my car away. And the whole time I'm just thinking, he has tons of cars. If there was a mix-up, he's acting like nothing can be done. This is the worst thing, aside from the fact that now the police have evidence on him because of Chuck and Wally, which was another thing that blew right by me. Chuck and Wally go to this cop and here's all this evidence against Krevsky. They're like, really? We've been trying to bust him for a long time. Well, he's busted now.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Krevsky runs up and screams about having an aneurysm, and the cops get him.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And so Blake wins it. The girl Shawn invites Wally to stay in San Diego with her. Mm-hmm. For what? I don't know. There's nothing between these two. There's nothing. Yeah. And Chuck and Michelle get ready to drive that Porsche with a giant gash in the dashboard to Lake Tahoe. Now, at that point, Shawn, clearly we're headed into the third act. What happens next?
I think you mean the sequel, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Because all I remember at this point is cutting to them like kind of all playing on the beach, and there's Bam Bam using Chuck's skis to basically surf or water ski without a boat on the ocean, which I have to think is impossible.
I think it is impossible. I think it's not a payoff. How much? Let me ask you this as a writer. How much do you
gnarly
think?
Man, that's it.
Right. How much do you think in terms of payoff? Setup and payoff
all the time. All the time.
Sure. Like, I mean, that's kind of
that's the key ingredient, I think, to a satisfying ending. Obviously,
yes.
It's some sort of payoff.
And certainly in comedy, you want to have a nice, clear setup that's not maybe too heavy-handed, so that it can pay off. And you're gonna have setup. Sometimes you'll throw a non sequitur in there.
Sure, paying off a prop is not that satisfying, unless it's a really important prop.
Right.
These skis are not that important.
Right, like if it was really under your nose the whole time, then it might be funny. Like if you knew more about Bam Bam and knew that, man, I'm a surfer, man, I can surf anything, or something like that early in the movie. And then, I mean, it's still not that funny. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's just weird. And there's a lot of screen time given to him running across the beach with the skis toward the water. And everybody's like, yeah, he's got my skis. He's running toward the water. Like, I don't care. No one says anything.
Right. And just in case I went to some kind of coma last night and did not remember from this, the movie ends and that Porsche is not back to Fasciana, right?
Right. He never gets to Tahoe. In this movie, they say they're going to go to Lake Tahoe, but in the movie, you don't ever get to that point. So everything you were thinking at the beginning about how this was going to end, movie. And it was kind of setting up your expectations. It just let it die. They're just like, no Lake Tahoe.
No.
What could have been, without going to Lake Tahoe, Shawn, what would have been a more satisfying ending, do you think, in terms of that part of the storyline?
Well, we've seen this before, and we've talked about, the trope of a car in the 80s and the car getting damaged before, even on this podcast, when we talked about Heaven Help Us. Yeah. Well, that was the name of that movie, right? We talked with Joe and Jimmy, right? Right. Think of Ferris Bueller again. Right. They could have damaged the shit out of this car, which would have been funnier and which would have raised the stakes 1,000 times. And Craig, how easy would it be to pin that damage on Krevsky?
Sure.
So that he's the bad guy.
Sure.
And that Robert Stack is mad at him, and actually Chuck comes out of this looking golden. Even without getting the car to Tahoe. Right. Although I will argue that I still would have preferred the version where they go to Tahoe.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, that's
and met the daughter and all that stuff. Exactly. But I do think, it's like those options were available to them. Yeah. I think even within the setup that they have and the context of these characters in that world. And for whatever reason, they didn't make those choices. And I think it's a lesser movie because of that, Yeah. Yeah, it's like you want your hero to succeed in some capacity. Here, he's got a girl that might be a girlfriend. We're just left hanging on the thing that he was supposed to do. Right. Right.
Well, and again, he's super uptight. He's only focused on making money. Like, that's what he's sort of set his life goal toward, just making money. So you would feel like at the end, he's got to go to Fasciano and say, like, screw your car. Exactly. In your life. Like, I don't need that. Like, this girl here, like, she's what life is about. Just living in the moment and just doing what makes me actually feel like a good person. Yeah. Like, you need that showdown.
Yeah. Even in that beach scene at the end, somebody asked, I guess you got to hit the road to get that car up by Tahoe. And he's like, you know what? Throws the keys in the ocean. done. I don't want to
Sure.
see that car again in my life.
Sure, yeah.
It's not my responsibility. Like something like that,
Yeah.
like even just that, like just resolve that storyline.
Yeah.
That's it. Like give us something.
Because well, and I'll say one last thing. Because
go for it. Yeah.
Like it's still not okay to just say like we're going to drive this Porsche to Lake Tahoe now, but like that's kind of okay. Again, if that car was not damaged at all.
Yeah.
Then I'd be like, okay, they'll just drive it to Lake Tahoe. But it still feels like, well, where's the scene where he sees the gash in the dashboard? Like, why did you ever gash the dashboard?
Or, again, Ferris Bueller style, address it. Like, what are you going to tell Fasciano about the dash?
Exactly.
You know what? I'm just going to tell him exactly what happened. And he can either kill me or not kill me. But I'm done with this, and I'll do what I'll deliver the car, and that's what matters, blah, 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 blah. I mean, something where it's like, okay, he's got a spine.
Right.
He's going to stand up to this guy.
Yeah.
Lessons learned, Craig. Lots of lessons here.
A lot of lessons here, guys.
I want to just, for a second, go back and explain.
Yeah.
Again, the security guards.
Yes.
Right? Pulling the gun on these two guys for standing beside a car.
Sure.
Even there's an opportunity. Have them be in on the fix with Krevsky.
Right.
So, okay, that's why they pulled the guns, because they know this car is stolen, and they don't want people taking a good long look at it.
Sure.
Even though they're about to give it to a girl when she wins this pageant, which kind of makes no sense. But, it's just like, connect those dots.
Well, and I'll say this, speaking of the security guards, there's also moments where, the security guards are always played for comedy. Even though the first time you meet them, they pull guns, which isn't very funny. That seems like they're at least dangerously funny. But in one of the points where our two heroes are being chased around the grounds of this hotel by the security guards, which goes on for way too long.
Too long.
But they're being chased around the grounds during the day. And in order to get away from them, Chuck grabs Wally, and they run up onto this stand where some of the beauty contestants are getting their pictures taken by this photographer, and they hide behind the girls. First of all, I thought that's really dumb, that would never work, but at the same time I'm like, okay, at least they're hiding and fine, and these two security guards will run by. But instead when the security guards run up to them, Chuck says, hey guys, over here, and they see him and they go running up after them. Chuck and Wally step out of the way, and both security guards go through the gazebo and into a little muddy pond.
Yeah.
And all I could think was, how is that the end? You were just running from them. You were very frightened of them. How is making them fall in a mud puddle solve your problems? But that's the end of the thing. It's done. They fell in a mud puddle. Chase is over. You know what I mean?
Not only that, they could have shot them at any point.
Of course.
Really.
Of course.
And after they established that, that's the problem, really, with them, the guards doing that in that very first scene. It's like you have to explain why they're not shooting them in the other instances when they're clearly
right.
Have more motive to than just standing beside a car.
Yeah.
Crazy. Craig.
It's a lot to think about. Yeah.
Did you, by chance, glance at the credits of this director, David Lewis?
You know what? I didn't. He's actually not mentioned here on the film page.
This is going to blow your mind a little bit, okay?
Okay.
David Lewis is mostly known as a cinematographer, and he shot Night of the Demons, Craig. Night of the Demons 2. He did several of the Leprechaun movies.
Wow.
UHF. There's some seminal 80s classics in there.
UHF.
Across genre. Yeah. Chairman of the Board, the Carrot Top movie.
Holy cow.
Some interesting stuff. Pee-wee's Playhouse. He did many episodes on that. So, pretty interesting resume. The directing is very small, and it looks like Dangerous Curves was I think, first and last actual feature film
directorial
that he directed.
Yeah.
And I think you can see why. And I will say, obviously, 1,000 flaws that we pointed out in this movie. it's kind of interesting to watch because of that. Because of, I think we give a lot of these 80s movies, like, like we talked about, like you're expecting a certain level of cheese and like, dated look and all these things. And, the nostalgia side may be weighing on why we like a lot of them. And then you see something like this, which, we're only nostalgia for because of the period, not because we've seen this one. But you see where it can go, like that model can still go really, really kind of wrong and less effective than the other ones.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I kind of enjoyed, and look, it is obviously very lighthearted and lightweight and easy to kind of digest. It's an hour and a half, I don't think you're going to be miserable watching this thing. You're going to be scratching your head like we were and going, what are they doing? Why is this movie going this direction?
True.
So, for educational purposes, I completely recommend this movie. I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there when looking at, like, especially like we're talking about, like setup, payoff, all that stuff.
Yeah, I do too. And the main thing I was kind of thinking about was like, it's a good movie for anybody to watch, to sort of learn, to watch and sort of see things not kind of work out and sort of, give you that exercise of, sort of trying to puzzle out like why things are maybe not landing, jokes aren't landing, things aren't making sense. But like, I was especially thinking like if I, as someone starting out, especially if you're about to shoot something, shoot a short or a feature maybe that you wrote and you're going to do it on your own or whatever, it's kind of a good thing to watch because I kind of feel like this, you could say this is sort of an example of, it feels like a first draft of a script was made into a movie.
Very good point.
And like, really like there's so little connection between the things that happen. And that's a part of why it never builds to anything. And it never, like the payoffs are generally so weak. I mean, it just, so much doesn't make sense. And so little as things you pointed out, like about the beauty pageant, like instead of Wally saying, hey, the Padres are hosting the Mets this weekend. Like what? You guys never went to a baseball game. Like, but you were talking about that at the beginning of the movie. Like, why didn't you say, exactly. This beauty pageant's going on and the hottest chicks in the world are there, like, great.
Or even if they already had tickets to the game when this thing came up, it's like, okay, well we can still go to the game and make it to Tahoe in plenty of time.
Right.
I mean, something. Well, and the thing but I think actually, and what's good about that too is like nothing that I have worked on makes it to the screen or has made it to the screen without like dozens and dozens of drafts. Like, those things get rewritten to hell. Maybe this did, but you're right. It just does not feel like it. No. There's too many obvious choices that could have been made to clean up some of those lingering issues.
Yeah.
For it to have gone through that many drafts.
Yeah.
This is a good case example and argument to be had for lots of rewriting.
Well, not even similar movies, not terribly similar movies, but this would be an interesting one to put up against Get Crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Get Crazy it's super weird, but that stuff really lands really well, and the movie makes sense. There's a thing to watch there. So yeah. Yeah,
and all the jokes, at least you're getting some really good quality ones.
Yeah.
I was surprised by the lack of trivia on the IMDb about this movie, and there's virtually none. But on the Wikipedia page, I did look up. They mentioned right up front that there were appearances by two actresses. When I didn't recognize Debbie Dunning. I think she's a well-known model in some regards. But the other, Cynthia Geary, I looked up, and fans of Northern Exposure, she played Shelley. Who, I loved that show, and her character was really, like she was like the waitress. She was married to the older guy, and I think they were both contestants in the beauty pageant. So now I kind of want to go back and just watch 10 seconds to see if I can pick her out of a lineup there.
Nice.
Oh, Craig, that was an adventure.
It was
in babysitting, and
I wish.
Oh, I did see. I think Grant Heslov was in License to Drive, which is kind of fun. And another car movie. There's so many from this era that use that trope in all the different ways. And while I'm still under oath, I don't regret having watched it.
I 3/4 regret having watched it.
Hey, you want last words?
Last words I got for you are, I was hoping I had a quote here. I really don't.
From the movie?
Yeah.
How about the one where the pageant host said, "They're all Puerto Ricans to me"?
Oh, man.
Some things were better left in the 80s.
Maybe we can put that one back.
While we do that, you should come check out our website and find us online. And hey, we'll be back next week with a mini episode and we'll talk news. Until then, Craig, I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Shawn.